Hi everyone, welcome to another video in AB Analytica. In this video, we will Dockerize a web application. If you are new to Docker, you can check out my previous video to get some basic understanding of Docker. In this video, we will first familiarize with the Flask application. We will create a Dockerfile, expose ports. We will see some common mistakes encountered during Dockerization. We will see some new Docker commands like running Docker in background, port mapping, Docker exec, Docker logs, etc. We will explore the container file system and also we will see some best practices along the way. We will also see how to create a dockerignore file. This is a simple web application using Flask which I developed for a previous video which is linked in the description. Before proceeding to dockerizing this application, let's first run this app and see the endpoints. We will run this app by using python app.py command. So now we can see that the app is running, and also we can see a warning that this is a development center and do not use it in production deployment. So one thing which we have to do is we have to remove the debug equal to true when we are deploying to Docker. Let's see the app running. Okay, so now we can see welcome to Flask. This is the home page. We have an endpoint called users. This will display a JSON and we have a route welcome. This will show another page. Now let's dockerize this web application. First we will change debug equal to false. Then we will add host and port. We will use the same port 5000, which is the default port for Flask applications. The host parameter defines the IP address on which the Flask application will listen for incoming request. 0000 is a special IP address that tells the server to listen on all available network interfaces. That will let us use the application from a different device. Let's save the file, and we will also need a requirements.txt file. And in that we will add our requirement, which is Flask. Now let's create a Docker file. The Docker file is a blueprint for what has to be done. First, we will add the Python base image. We will use a slim official image of Python from, we will use Python 3.12. Slim. Next is copying the files from the current directory to the container. So that can be done by copy followed by the source and the destination. Source is the current directory and destination we will use the root of the container. Next we have to install the dependencies in the container machine by running a command, and the command is to install all the requirements from requirements.txt. Next step is making the port available to the world outside of the container. So that is done by expose command, and after that we have to run the Flask application. For that we will use the same command which we used earlier to run the command in local environment, but this time as strings separated by comma. Python and app.py. So our Docker file is ready. Make sure that the Docker engine is running. So as you can see, my Docker engine is running currently, and I don't have any containers or images in the system now. We can build the image by using docker build command and use /t to name the image. The repository name I will give web app and version 1 as tag. And then we have to specify the location to the Docker file. We will give dot because the Docker file is in the current directory, and press enter. Now the Docker image is built, and in the logs we can see the image ID. So we can check it. So now we can see web app version 1 and the image ID starts with 011. Now let's run the image. So we can use docker run followed by the image name or ID. I will use the repository and tag name. So now we can see the app is running on this location. We can also confirm that in the Docker desktop. We can see that the container is running, and if we go inside the container, we can see the files which are copied from the local directory. We can see the virtual environment app.py, Dockerfile, and templates folder, requirements.txt. All of these are copied from the local directory to the container. Now let's try to access the endpoint from browser. This endpoint is currently not accessible outside the container because the port is not mapped yet. So now let's do port mapping. And also note that currently we are seeing the logs in the command prompt. If we have to use the command prompt, we will have to open in another terminal. So to avoid that, we can use detach mode. Next, we will run the new container in detach mode. So we will run the container by using docker run command. And this time we will run it in detach mode. For that, we will use the flag -t, and then we will use the flag -p to map the ports. I will map port 5001 in the local machine to 5000 of the container and specify the image tag. It is web app v1, and let's press the enter. Now we can see that the container is running. We have not seen any logs because it is in a detached mode. If we want to see the logs, we can see the logs by using docker logs command followed by the name or ID of the container. I will just pass 82. So now we can see it is running. Now let's go to Docker desktop and check it. So now a new container is running, and you can see the port mapping also here. Port 5000 is mapped to port 5001 of the local machine. Let's click on this. Now we have successfully accessed the Flask application outside the container. Let's check other endpoints also. Okay, we have received the JSON file from users. The welcome page is also getting displayed. Now let's improve our code. Now if we inspect the container, we can see that inspect, and if we go click on files, we can see that the virtual environment is copied. We can use a docker ignore file if docker to ignore some files from getting copied. Generally, files containing environment variables and critical information like passwords, username, etc. are not passed to the Docker image. Now let's add a docker ignore file. And inside the docker ignore file, we will just add a .vnb. So that is the only thing which we don't want to push to the container. And also all the files are copied in the same directory. Instead, we will create a working directory in the container. That is done by workdir command, and we will use a new directory /app, and we will copy all the files from current working directory to the app directory in the container. Now let's build the image again. Docker build t, and we will give the specify the name as web app version 2, and we will use the Docker file in the same directory. So we will just press dot here. The Docker image is built. Now let's run the Docker image. We will run it in detached mode, and we will mark the map the ports. I will map 5002 to 5000 and pass on the image ID, that is 9f. Now we can see the container is running. This is the new container. Let's check it in the browser. It's running in the browser also. And now if we go inside, we can see in the files, we can see there is a new app folder, and everything from our app, our local environment is copied to the app. We can access the terminal of the container by using docker exec command, followed by the ID of the container, and by using command /bin/sh. This will open a shell. We can we should open the shell in an interactive mode. IT. So now we can access the shell. Let's see the working directory. It is /app. It is same as the current working directory, and we can see the files in the app by using ls. We can also see the files in the root directory of the container. That's all from me in this video. If you have some doubts or if you need me to cover some topic, let me know in the comments. Press the like button if you found this video useful, and also subscribe to the channel to not miss any updates. We'll see you soon in another video. Thank you. Keep coding.